need to meet him. And I remember our first meeting very clearly. And I remember walking away being inspired by you and the mission you are on. And that was the beginning of what's been, I think, a good long run between us so far, and more to do.
Yep.
And I think your story is just so great, and it's so important that people hear it. So what I'd love to do is to sort of hand it over to you, and you can go back as far as you want into childhood, because I think childhood is two things, right? It's the training ground, and you're informed by what your parents did in the world. It informed what you are doing in the world to some degree, whether we like it or not,
whether we want to or not.
Yeah, and we can go we can talk about as much of that as you're willing to. And I also recognize that some things are not for a public forum with listeners and viewers. So that's up to you, not up to me. Sometimes I'll get a little too down in the trench, but that's okay, because life is short. So talk a little bit about your early days, and then I'll kind of tap us around from there.
Yeah, great. So background wise, born in Durham, North Carolina. My dad, shortly after I was born, just a few years after, moved our family outside of Boston, Massachusetts. Originally the plan was like he was going to go and actually study theology, right? And then come right back to the South. My parents were both from Charlotte. But instead, he got caught up in kind of this, what they would call like the church planting movement in New England, which was like basically entrepreneurship meets churches, right? Is a good way to think about it. And so in 1985, he started a church in the office of a gas station, right? Like the kind where you bring your own folding chair and or tambourine, right?
And or tambourine optional, I'm assuming.
Tambourine's optional. Although I've got some good memories of some older folks rocking the tambourine, which is, a very loud instrument in a small space.
It can be loud.
Yeah. But by the mid 90s, there were 1,000, 1,500, sometimes 2,000 people at church on some Sundays. So I bring that up to say, seeing at least for me, seeing my dad build something was really powerful, right? Because I got a behind the scenes look at what are the things he cares about? What are the measurements he's using to understand if this thing has momentum? How is he gathering people, right? All the kinds of things. And I think the pluses of that were many. And then I'd also say, me, and I was the middle son of 3 boys at that point. When I was 11, we would have a little sister, right? But there's almost 2 versions of our family, right?
Absolutely. I had the same thing. My sister came along when I was 10, right? And
totally.
Ruined the party for me. I was an only child.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was more I remember seeing what she got for Christmas later and stuff, I'm like, oh, you weren't here for the bread sandwich days, where you had 2 the bread with hope in between them, But I think because my dad was building something, and we've had a lot of great healing and conversations around this, I think a lot of his energy was outside of the home, right? And my mom was also working. She was a dental hygienist. And so there was very much a vibe of you are well loved. You're never going hungry, but we don't have a lot of extra, right? And you better figure it out, So age 13, my dad took.
Go back because I want to get back. So mom, talk about mom for a minute, right? So dad, obviously the big male figure. Mom, what was mom's role? Was mom the glue? Was mom also working?
Yeah.
Was mom?
Yeah, she was working full time. She would have years of part time, then years of full time, right? Fluctuated as a dental hygienist. But she was definitely I mean, my mom is crazy hardworking, retired from full-time dental hygienist work, which, is all day on your feet with your hands in people's mouths, right? Like that's the gig. Um,
Yep.
she retired at age 71.
Wow.
So like my mom, amazing work ethic. And my mom always kept it positive, which was a super great model. And then I also say one of the best things, the best kind of bits of advice that I ever got in my life was from my mom. And it was that people are more important than things. And she like modeled that, drilled that into our heads, and that had a huge effect, on my life. And I would say mom was like in some ways she was the glue. She was also just the positive one. Like you could do no wrong,
And your
so
dad was
definitely
more
a big encourager.
your dad kind of the wait till your father gets home dad.
I mean, there was definitely some of that. I mean, I grew up in a house that supported spankings. It's a different day and age. Yeah, but I think with my dad, like, not, I think a lot of things are caught more than taught, right?
What do you mean by that? Unpack that a little.
Yeah, so some stuff is like, let me sit down and give you a life lesson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that might be 10% of it, right?
Yeah.
90% of being in a family is what's caught, like what's learned through osmosis. You know what I mean? Like this is who we are, that kind of stuff. Yep. And so there was some good stuff there, but there was also some like you get your identity through performance, all that kind of stuff was kind of in the mix. And so, yeah, I mean, age 13, my dad, thank God he did this. Like, I'm very grateful. Took me down to City Hall in our little town, Hudson, Mass. And he had to come in and co-sign because at 13, you could only get a worker's permit if your parent or guardian signed it too.
Yeah.
Yep. But so like I was off. Like I started working then and loved it. Like still love it. I like, man, to build things, to create, to collaborate, to problem solve, I was, dude.
Put me
yeah,
in, coach. Put me in. So 13,
I was all about it. Yep.
And so did you go to work with him? Did you start something on your own early? Like, what was the moment where you were like, okay, I've watched him do it. Now I'm going to do it.
Yeah. So I fast forward. I mean, I was doing some of that, right? But a lot of that was like my earliest expressions of entrepreneurism were around music and being in a band.
Okay. Oh yeah, we'll get to that in a minute, right?
Yeah.
That's an interesting.
But even in high school, like my first band in high school, it was like, can we get a paying gig? And it was like, well, I heard so and so's cousin's getting married. Yeah. Sweet, like let's figure out how to do that.
So let's stop and kind of explore this piece of the because it really that starts. So entrepreneurship first manifested through being a musician. So talk about that part of your journey.
Yeah.
So it started when you start playing. I can't remember. We talked about this. You were.
Yeah, I was actually 16, so came to it pretty late. But it had happened because I had broken my wrist. I used to be one of those like hardcore rollerbladers who did like half pipes, handrails, and all that. Like my friends were in the early X Games, and I would like go backstage, when it was still in Rhode Island.
Yep.
Long time ago. And I broke my wrist in multiple places, broke my nose, tore off half my lip, all in one really gnarly wreck at downtown Boston at the Prudential Center. I'll never forget it. And my older brother had left his guitar from college, right? Like it's prerequisite that if you're the first son who goes to college, you pick up an acoustic guitar, right? But he had left it at home, and I had one of those casts that could perfectly like hold something, and like I just started learning, and pretty quickly I fell in love. Like Jimi Hendrix was my first like, oh my gosh, how did you like?
Yeah, it's a
can't
good
even
place to start.
fathom.
Yeah.
Dude.
guy he was from outer space.
No, I was baptized into that kind of world for guitar. And tried as much as I could figure out how to do stuff in high school, like to turn it into real. Like we put out a little demo when that was like a huge deal,
Now, what year was this roughly?
Oh man, this is 1996.
Okay, so 96. So grunge tore down hair metal, and 96. Where were we? Who were you listening to? What was? I'm always curious on the musical side. Who was ringing in that era?
Man, so in 1993, the Counting Crows album "August and Everything After" came out.
Yep.
Right, and I was like, a 13-year-old with flooded emotions. And I was like, I don't know what you mean, Adam Duritz, but everything is beautiful in your lyrics. Right. So big time, I would say it was like I wanted that kind of lyricism mixed with some Led Zeppelin guitars. Like that was
fucking Page, baby.
Dude, man, and Weezer's Pinkerton album number 2. Yeah. So
So were you playing music like that? So did the band come around? Did you I'm sure you
we were playing Hendrix. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Got it. Okay. Keep going.
Yeah. And at the same time, they joke when your dad's a pastor, you either go one of two ways. Like you're the saint kid or you're the super rebellion kid.
Or you're the devil.
Yeah. And I think I bridged that pretty well. Cause I had I would describe it as a real faith. And I wasn't a Puritan, or a fundamentalist. You know what I mean? Like I was never one to go, oh, because I like this dude Jesus, I can't listen to Hendrix.
Well, see, and here's the thing, right? We'll get. I'm going to unpack this later. We got a tenuous ground to tread. But I consider you what I consider a real Christian, a follower of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, to me, my problem isn't with Jesus; it's with his followers, or a lot of them. Yeah. And we're in this era where that is really slamming into nationalism, and you get into a whole other conversation. Yeah. But I've always experienced you as a different, as a what I would call a follower of Jesus. Yeah. And I think it's different, and it's part of what I love. In fact, one of the things that stuck out to me immediately is you had people working in your organization who were Muslim, and I was like, okay, I mean, this is not normal. It's big. It's a big tent you sit under. So, okay, so Jimi Hendrix, you're a person of deep faith, but it doesn't mean you can't unwind some gnarly guitar and wonder how he created it and participate
all of that.
Yes. Absolutely. All right.
Yeah. So what, I had this moment my senior year of college. I had a long night of wrestling, what I would describe as wrestling and prayer. Right. And kind of coming out of that, I felt like I was supposed to do something in ministry, right? Kind of follow the paths of my dad. All right. But didn't have any details, didn't know what that meant. But so I applied to 2 schools out of state because I wanted to see what is going on a large secular campus, right? Mm-hmm. It always was weird to me when, Christians would go, I want to go into ministry, so I'm going to go be around only Christians. You know what I mean? That felt too much bubble for me. So I applied to 2 schools out of state, UNC and NC State. I did not get into North Carolina, and I did get into NC State. So sight unseen, I end up at NC State starting in 1998. Yep. All right. Pack my bag. And that, I think that's true of my personality. I'll make a big decision and then be like, cool. Let's do it.
Roll.
So I get there, and honestly, really quickly, I was put off by what I saw in kind of the formal kind of quote unquote Christian ministries. Right. And from my perspective, they just felt exclusive and judgmental. And so I was like, oh, that's not for me. And around the same time, I had an opportunity to, this sounds so silly now, but it's also very entrepreneurial and very my personality, to start a Bible study at a fraternity in the South by pledging, right? Like that was the only way like to do that, was to become one kind of vibe, right? And so I end up pledging this fraternity, and I still remember so often the guys were like, we don't understand. You're not like sleeping with all the girls and you're not getting hammered. Like, what are you doing here? And I'd be like, hey guys, Bible study on Tuesday night, you know? They were like, does not compute. But what happened in that, which was super fun, was I fell in with a bunch of awesome musicians, and we started playing all of the frat parties, you know, which were the best paying parties.
Oh, they paid well, and I'm sorry that you did not partake in the other element that you were discussing, the ladies. To quote Gene Simmons, anyone who tells you they're in a band for any other reason than chicks is lying. I would actually believe that you were doing the Lord's work, but you missed a huge opportunity because there was a lot of other stuff going on after the party was over, as you know.
No, 100%. I'd be the guy who's like loading up his guitar, you know? But so, you know, so originally the plan was come out of college and go straight to like get my seminary degree or whatever. Right. But instead, the band I was in college loved those guys, but none of them wanted to take it further. You know what I mean? Like I was the most serious guy. And so
you were playing guitar and singing?
Yep. Lead songwriter, lead singer, lead guitarist.
Okay. Yeah. So your stuff.
Yep.
So your CEO.
Yep. So I recruited and partnered up with some really amazing musicians who were all at the University of North Carolina's music school. So really serious players. Yep. And started, so like coming out of college or like kind of my senior year, transitioned into, all right, I'm going to launch this new group. Like it's go time. And I also need a day job. Right. And so my day job was a research analyst in health policy at Duke University. Because I don't know if the glasses give it away, but I am like a for real nerd.
No, give it away. You're a total nerd. Yeah, you're a nerd.
Love learning. And so like by day, I'm doing health policy research. By night, like we'd play a local show Thursday night, and then we'd drive out, play somewhere far away Friday night, another place far away Saturday night.
Yeah, and then drive back.
We were doing that, right? But around that time, like the band had become a big ego support device for me, right? A lot of my identity was coming from it. And to give like context, you know, we were opening up every so often for like bands like Better Than Ezra. Our high water mark was we got to open up for Wilco once, you know.
You might have a similar story on all this, right? Like it's the Almost Famous. Like I almost got there, and then
this close, right? And seeing people make it, you know what I mean? Like seeing the lightning bolts strike, and you're like, man, if I stay out here long enough, maybe.
Dave Matthews, that was his neighborhood. You were.
Oh yeah. I mean, Charlottesville. We were playing all those places, you know. So, but the ego thing was getting, you know, good for my ego, bad for my soul. Right.
Yeah.
And at that time I met an epidemiologist, an expert of the AIDS pandemic from, the University of North Carolina. And he was like, hey, I'm leading this trip over to Nairobi. I'd like to have you come, and we're going to meet at my house for like 6 months, right? To get prepared for this. Well, that 6 months, we would meet at his house every Sunday, and we're reading some stuff that's like theology, but most stuff that's like economics, right? Like, hey, what happens if North American drug prices stay this high? What does that mean for the HIV/AIDS outcomes in sub-Saharan Africa, right? Stuff like crazy stuff that I had never thought of. Well, fast forward, we go over to Nairobi and we split up. So we're all staying separately. And I end up staying on the edge of one of the worst slums in sub-Saharan Africa with a Kenyan family with no running water. And like, I'd never even been to Canada. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have a warm-up country, like straight there.
Yeah.
And it's super cliche story to say, hey, middle-class white boy has to go to Africa to realize that poverty is real. But like, definitely that's what happens to me. And I came back from that trip, that kind of internal dissonance that you get where you're like, oh,
you're totally conflicted because you know something and you're trying to reconcile it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And I was trying, you can't unknow it. Yep. And I was trying to ignore it so I could keep propping up my ego with the band. Right. Yep. And my experience has been like those moments, call it God, call it the universe, whatever. Right. But when there's a new calling put in place, right, you can ignore it, but stuff's going to start to fall apart if you do.
Yeah. It starts tapping you on the shoulder.
Yep. And so like I did that thing, I joked that like, if a teenager has a thumping noise in their car, they don't get it fixed. They turn up the volume on the radio. Yeah. Right. So I tried to like double down on the band. Yeah. And then on my honeymoon, my wife, Tiffany, and I had met kind of soon after I'd gotten back from Africa, actually. And we got married in the summer of 2004, and our honeymoon ended in the emergency room, where I was hospitalized for several days. Never a good sign if your mom has to come to where you're having your honeymoon to help get you guys, kind of extricated. But that's what happened to us. And in the aftermath of that, kind of everything we thought we were going to build our life on, the band, music looking like this, touring, second album coming out, all that stuff. All of that was bulldozed, and 2 years of like intense suffering in there. Right.
So I'm going to back up first. Right. So you sort of throw in, and by the way, I got married during this period. So talk about that.
Yeah.
Talk about how that, like, how did that happen? And then I want to come forward back into this 2 years of call it the trench, call it whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So back up and where did you two collide? And are you, well, I already know the answer to this question, but I want you to describe the way you two are with each other.
Yeah. Collide is the right word. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we met. I love our meet cute story. It's a good one. So I was playing at a house show.
Of course.
Like our band. Yep. And it was like, footprints on the ceiling, kind of out of control. Right. Yeah. And all these like girls who were like super dressed up, Carolina, undergrads, walk by like kind of right where we're playing. But one girl is really dressed down, super casual, and she's wearing a T-shirt from a summer camp that my dad used to be a guest speaker at. And I kind of lean away from the microphone. And I just go, "Nice shirt," And she went home that night being like, "Hey, what was going on there? That there was some kind of magical spark, right?"
Yeah.
Well, the next day, I didn't realize this. So my parents had moved from Massachusetts down to North Carolina when I was in college, right? So my dad was the head pastor of this like 3,000 person mega church, and that next day I'm on stage playing a grand piano. And there's like pictures of my trip to Nairobi, up on the big screen. Yeah. Like you could not have planned a better A game, like rock and roll guy Saturday night, church Sunday morning. And he plays the guitar and the piano. And that Tiffany jokes, but like that started her being like repeatedly introducing herself to me. um, fast forward, it took me longer than it should have to wake up to
I was gonna
her
say, it
awesomeness.
sounds like you might have just missed. Like she was like, "Hey, dummy," and you were like,
Totally.
Yep.
No, absolutely. So fast forward, we kind of had something that started and then it kind of petered out. But then she wrote me this letter that just saw through all of my BS. Like it was so insightful and so kind of in the best way scathing and truthful, you know?
Do you still have the letter?
I don't. Well, I think my parents do. I think it's in my parents' attic.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. It's a good question.
Basically, she called you on your bullshit,
Yes.
like just directly as a way to finally smack you on the head and go, dummy, over here.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, she was like, she had an amazing job lined up at a think tank in DC after college. And in that period from the letter to when she was leaving was maybe 3 or 4 weeks, you know?
Yeah.
And we fell madly in love. And she lasted a little while in DC, but then moved back to Chapel Hill. And we got engaged.
So
and
quick.
then,
yeah. So it moved
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah. I mean, met in late 02, married in summer of 04.
Yeah. Quick.
Yeah. Very quick. And yeah, and I would describe our relationship. If anybody who's watching knows the Enneagram world, right? The kind of personality test kind of thing. The Enneagram 8 is like the fighter challenger role, right?
Yeah.
And we are both Enneagram 8s.
Yep.
And so
we share that. You and I are. I'm an 8 as well.
Yep. And I've had to, remind my lovely wife, Tiffany, many times, like, this is a family, not a fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like our default mode.
The fight's outside, not inside.
Totally. But it's like, if you remember the Michael Jackson Beat It video where they like strapped together and they each had switchblades, like that was the visual metaphor for our marriage. And we've been married 21 years now. Yeah, which is amazing. But, coming after our honeymoon and after all the suffering and the band kind of falling apart and all of that, right? One thing became more and more clear. Like it was like resounding that if we were going to be about this kind of life of faith, then we could not ignore those who were suffering on the margins of our society. Like that was a non-negotiable.
Kind of like, sorry.
Yeah. But I realized like I didn't know how to do that. You know what I mean? Like, and I would say like
the white kid, right? To your point, how do you know when you don't know?
Totally. And I would say like the kind of culture, the faith culture I'd come out of, talked a lot about the virgin birth and talked a lot about the crucifixion, but didn't spend a lot of time on the middle bits, right? Of that story where you see the like feeding of the hungry, the healing of the blind, like all that stuff. And so like, I didn't have a practical expression of that. Right. And so Tiffany and I decided, unrelated to music, like we just had some connections in Nashville and we decided to move to Nashville 18 years ago.
I was gonna say, so what year did you land?
March of 2007.
So you were here when the boom was starting, but it hadn't really gotten a full head of steam yet.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you could still buy a house for the price of a VCR, right? Like we were in that stage.
Not no more. Not no more.
No. And we intentionally moved into a low income neighborhood and just tried to start doing life with people around us. Simultaneously, Tiffany, and anybody, I joke about this, but it's absolutely true. Like Tiffany is way tougher than me. And she got a job at the men's prison. And got certified by the Tennessee Department of Corrections to be a job training specialist. So like helping these guys come
Figure
home
out how
to
to,
employment,
yep.
right? And she created her own like a curriculum, and I mean, it was amazing what she was doing, right? And they were coming home to their neighborhood, right? Like we happened to be living there, right? But we were the strangers. This was their home, you know? And we just kept an open front door. So we were doing life with these guys and their families and the kids in the neighborhood. And we slowly but surely, through the kindness of my neighbors, right? Who would be like, hey, Will, you're being an idiot again, right? Like your bias is showing, your misunderstanding is showing, right? Will, your past, like your racism is showing because you've never looked closely at where you came up with that idea, you know? And I was like, oh my gosh.
Give me a working example of that. Unpack one specific that stuck out that someone did you the favor of sort of revealing to you.
Yeah, I'll give you one. So like simple things, right? Like I initially came into the neighborhood assuming that a lot of poor people were poor because they were lazy. Right.
Yep.
And so saying to somebody, you know, why don't you get a job? Like having an honest conversation with somebody and having them go, oh, you think I can't pay my bills because I don't have a job? I'm actually juggling 3. And Will, you have no idea how painful that is to hear you say that, you know, or to assume that I'm not already working my butt off. Right.
Yep.
And then another layer of this was what I would call theological arrogance. Right. Hey, I've got the best.
What do you mean by that? Unpack that.
Yeah. So like, you know, different kind of flavors of Christianity have their own versions of what they think is like the pinnacle of the truth. Do you know what I mean? Like, and from the outside, you'd be like, it all kind of looks the same. But when you're in it, it's like, no, this is the exact right way. That kind of spirit, right? And I came out of a tradition that loved specificity. We're going to nail.
You were not Catholic, correct?
No.
You come out of.
So raised Southern Baptist, and then went and got my master's in biblical studies from a school called Reformed Theological Seminary. And the Reformed tradition going back to John Calvin, right, is really big on like, it's systematic theology, which by definition is like, let's get it all figured out, right? And once you've got it figured out, you've got it right. Now, that's not everybody in that world, but it was me, right? Like I had that arrogance. And so like, you know, the idea that, I've got the perfect right articulation of the gospel, right, for my neighbor. And I'm going to tell it to her,
Until she gets it. Yeah.
Yeah, until she gets it. Come to find out, she's been a member of a church that's been in the neighborhood for 100 years, you know, started by former slaves. And she has raised 31 kids, only 4 of whom were hers biologically. The rest, she literally was just loving on people who were in need in the community, you know? And so when I say like that kind of like me going, oh God, I'm going to go ahead and, you know, and then God being like, hey, idiot, I love you. And guess what? That's a saint right there. I want you to go learn from that saint, you know, like it was that kind of experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yep.
And I would say too, some of it was just a naive oversimplification. It's hard.
I mean, you don't know what you don't know until you know.
Absolutely.
Back to what it goes back to going over there and going, oh, like shit, like
yes,
you don't know until, and now you can't unsee it. So now you're, and I know, you know, you had your car stolen and shit. I mean, like you guys were
3 times,
you know, so you're in the middle of all of this.
Yep.
And you're a lifelong learner. So, and you are thinking more big tent.
Yep.
And your wife's not, I mean, so you guys, and then let's add the other things. Let's add your kids to the mix. Let's throw that into the blender now, because what you just described isn't enough. So let's add another layer. And we don't have to go too into that, but you threw another log on the fire that to me was like, what?
Yeah, totally. So we, even in our dating life, we had talked about wanting to adopt, like as part of our story.
Yep.
And so we chose to adopt domestically, like out of Memphis.
Yeah.
And we brought home our son, Raylan, from the hospital, amazing kiddo. And we had an experience there in the hospital where like we were in the NICU with him because he had some complications early. And we just saw all these NICU units with like these babies kind of on their own, and knew a lot of it was like, oh, you've got a low income mom who had to be back at work within 48 hours of giving birth, like, so it wasn't abandonment. It was just like the complicated nature of poverty.
Reality.
Right?
Yep.
Yep. And so after that experience, we decided we were going to adopt again. So we ended up adopting twice. And our daughter, Penelope, came home with us a few years after Raylan. So, I fast forward, our family is a very modern looking family. Like Tiffany is Mexican-American on her mom's side. Our son is African-American with disabilities, multiple disabilities. And our daughter is Afro-Latina. And then I'm just like the random white dude,
Yeah. And in the middle is the old white dude.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
The gray-haired white guy. But
hold on. So you're in the middle of all that. What are you doing at that moment, you professionally? Because she's at the prison. You got these kids. You're out getting spanked by the local saint down the street. Right? Like, what are you doing at that point? You're not still doing music, are you?
No. So wasn't doing music. Kind of put that away after that whole 2 years of suffering post our honeymoon. I got into the software world working for a company here in Nashville, kind of B2B, B2C stuff, right? And this is in the days where it's like everybody used to have like a GeoCities kind of thing, and now you have to upgrade to something real. You know what I mean? And loved, like, I fell in love with getting to work with new businesses as they were trying to use technology to grow, right? Like that part was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And I was also I was doing a master's program, sometimes in Charlotte, mostly online. And then we launched. So kind of like the trajectory was, I'm doing that. Tiffany's doing the prison stuff. I'm taking classes. And then we launched Corner to Corner, our nonprofit, when we basically had seen, so many neighbors with amazing passion, creativity, and drive, right? But without a bridge of opportunity to express that in the marketplace in a way.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in a way that would get them out of poverty and keep them out of poverty.
So what year was that where that all catalyzed, and you're still living in this? Are you still living in the same place? And when did that all kind of catalyze together?
Yeah, I mean, we're still living in the same place. I'm still in the same neighborhood. And on Monday, no joke, Mark, on Monday, I had the news people come to my house. And this lady was like, were you here yesterday on Sunday? And did you hear all the gunfire? Would you be willing to make a comment? And I was like, yeah, I heard all the gunfire. I was like right next to it. I told my kids it was construction noise. Kids, if you're watching this, I'm sorry I lied to you. And I was like, and no, I will not be on the news.
There you go. Well, so what year was that where you guys decided, hey, we're going to start a nonprofit and help our neighbors?
Yeah, so the kind of planning and praying was 2011. And when I say planning, what I really mean is like, I'm a big believer in what's called asset-based community development rather than needs-based. Needs-based says, here's all the things that are wrong. Let's come in with our solutions and fix it, right? And it tends to have like a hero savior kind of vibe, and a built-in arrogance. And whereas asset-based goes, oh my gosh, there's already so many amazing things happening here. How would we amplify the good? Yep. And so we partnered with our local rec center around the corner from our house. And was like, you guys have a great facility. You guys have a heart for the community. What could we do together? And that was 2011. And then the first official program was early 2012. And I've got my Scrum Master certification, product owner, all that stuff. So we're big agile, kind of to-do doing done vibe. Yep. And so the first thing we did was Tiffany's job training class at the local rec center, and very quickly went from like 5 to 15.
That was birthed in the prison, right? You just transferred it over into the community.
Yep. Yeah, because parts of our city have some of the highest incarceration rates in the nation. And so the recidivism, is kind of constantly happening. And we went from, 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 people all in that first month. Deep friendships and relationships started to develop. And we did that for years, right? All funded kind of from Tiffany and I's own day jobs. And then those same neighbors were like, hey, this was around 2015 because the economy had really heated up by then, right? And they came to us and were like, hey, I don't need your help getting a bad job anymore, right? Like even being a former offender, I can get $11, $12 an hour by myself, right? And I still can't afford to live in this city. And that was the point, like in conversations with neighbors, where it's like, man, entrepreneurship is the way to play the infinite game, right? Mm-hmm. Where you go, oh man, can I get this high? And then you do, and you go, could I even take it further? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then you do, and like it becomes the way to tie the value you create to the value you take home in a closer way, right? Is maybe how I'd say it. And so we found a curriculum, a nationally recognized curriculum. We licensed it and brought it to that same local rec center that we've been at for years, and launched. That first cohort was in 2016. So, and fast forward, we've now graduated 1,631 of these entrepreneurs. Last year put $37.2 million back into the neighborhood economy. I have story after story of badass neighbors being brave and betting on themselves and creating small businesses that have become the economic engines of their families. And as they grow, even the wider communities. And it has been, freaking joy of my life. Yeah.
So that is a sort of a long story unto itself, right?
Yeah.
So you guys birthed out of, to me, when I think about, classic founders have crazy ideas that everybody else thinks are crazy until they manifest them to the point where people start going, wait a minute, maybe you're not wrong about this.
Yeah.
So I want to I think that kind of happens in three kind of buckets, right? So the early days are, you feel like you're talking to the wall, right? And then people start to believe, and then they realize, then they finally get it, right? So talk about the those early days of that big hairy audacious goal, and people looking at you like you had 3 fucking heads.
Yeah, well, one, I love this. I love the way you pattern that, and I would say I had 2 versions, right? Okay. Where my friends in the business community, like in the successful business world or whatever, upwardly mobile, they were like, this will never work. Or why wouldn't that person just come work for me? Right? Like the resistance I got was profound. And meanwhile, in the neighborhood, like people were like, of course, like, let's do this. Make this kind of information more accessible. Right. So there was like, the neighborhood was like early adopters, you know what I mean? And hungry for it.
You were, yeah.
And they knew what was in them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
they're like, if you give me enough at bats, I'm gonna hit some amazing shots. Yeah, right. Some home runs are coming. Um, but in those early days, yes, it was impossible. I mean, and again, remember, we were funding this ourselves, and
Right.
to license it was $10,000. And I remember going, what? Where? Like, my wife works in nonprofit. Like, where
Yeah.
are we gonna get the money for this? Right?
Kids, like, yeah. Like,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, totally. And like, oh my gosh, like I tried to do like a breakfast fundraiser thing and maybe scrape together $2,000 there. Like it was, it was so hard. And then it's a great story. I had one friend who we had met. His name is Paul Roper. He
I know
tragically
Paul well.
passed.
To run
Yeah.
Used to be the PM at Jewel Tone.
Yeah. And passed away from cancer last year. Yep.
Yeah.
Paul, we met at the at tutoring after school for a local school where we'd play basketball with the kids for 30 minutes and then we'd read books with them for like an hour. Right.
That's cool.
That's where Paul and I met in 2007. And just became good buds. Right. Well, fast forward, Paul's like, hey, Will, I really like this thing you're doing, this corner to corner thing. I want to help, can we grab coffee? So we got coffee and he slid an envelope across the table. And I could never tell this story when Paul was alive because he's a very like nonchalant behind the scenes kind of guy. But he slid this envelope across the table and he's like, don't open it here, open it in your car, whatever. And I was like, man, maybe there's $100 in here. There could be a check for $100. Like I was pumped, right? I get out to my car after our coffee hang and there's a check for $20,000. And up until that point, I had thought Paul and I were kind of on the same level financially.
Yeah. Turns
out we weren't because he had helped sign the band, the Lumineers.
Yeah.
And they're a huge hit and like all that stuff. Right. But thanks to him, we were able like to get that program going, get off the ground, but in those early days, I mean, and then people were like, how are you even going to get people to show up? Right. And we had 13 people sign up and then I'll never forget our first ever graduation. We did it at the Bloodwater offices, another nonprofit here in Nashville, downtown. Had about 40 people there. And one of our students was a 13-year-old girl who had this awesome business of hand making kind of buttons and greeting cards that she would sell to other teenagers to try to get them offline and communicate with each other differently. Right. Yeah. And she shares this vision with this room full of 40, business leaders. Yeah. And instantly, Mignon Francois, dynamo business leader, amazing role model. She jumps up and she goes, darling, or sorry, I'm messing up this story. She was in the crowd. Well, this girl gets up, shares her vision for her business, teenagers communicating offline. And all the grownups are like, oh my gosh, I wish my kid would do that. Right. Like everyone's having this tender moment. And then she goes, and by the end of Q2, I want to sell 100 units. Right. And everyone's like, what? And Mignon jumps up, darling, I am ordering your first 100 units tonight. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then another business leader jumps up and I'm ordering your second 100 units tonight. And I saw in real time this girl who was kind of, very shy, quiet on the microphone, like her shoulders go back, her eyes go up, right? And you see the moment where the horizon got bigger for her, right? And that was the moment I was like, this is my drug of choice. Like seeing people take a hold of opportunity and build what they want to build, and how do I get more of that? And that, I was probably already a zealot, as but that really got me going.
Well, it's just for context, right? So last graduation, how many people did you graduate last time, and where did that occur, and in front of how many people?
Yeah, I mean, like, uh,
The last graduation, the graduation I saw was at Titan Stadium. There
yeah,
were
yeah,
3,000 people. You
yep,
graduate.
yeah,
I can't remember how many went across the stage, and it was like
175 or something like that.
it was like
Yeah,
a giant freaking part. Like I was like, oh, okay, I got it now. Like,
yep.
and you got to have that moment. You got that same moment has been occurring now for how many years? 10,
Yeah,
10th year?
2016, twice
Yeah,
twice a
so
year since 2016. Yeah.
you've
Um,
gotten that moment and gotten to watch it grow.
yep.
When you think about that growth,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I kind of talked about. So we talked about phase one, 40
Yep.
people, right? So
Yep.
you're now. Let's talk about kind of the middle. So now you're on a mission.
Yep.
Your wife's on a mission, and now you're bringing other people to the mission, and
Yep.
now you got to build a team.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how the organization has grown and what kind of that middle moment, right? And
Yep.
then I want to kind of jump to today, which is got a new another layer of interesting overlay,
Yes.
shall we say?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. No, for
let's kind
sure.
of stick in the middle for a minute. So
Mm-hmm.
you start finding other people and getting them on the mission. How does that talk a little bit about that building process, and then about how that changed what you did, right?
Yeah.
Because your role has changed. Tiffany stepped not out, but further
Yep.
back, right? And
Yep.
doesn't have necessarily an active role. So kind of talk about all those dynamics that developed in that kind of second phase of growth.
Yeah. So I would say the first thing that's really critical is from our earliest days of forming a board and doing that stuff, we always had a value that we described as pass the mic, right? Or get off stage fast, or the ways we described it. And what we meant was, it was always funny to me that you'd see these nonprofits who've been going 40 years in the city, and they'd be like, we've developed leaders. And then you look, and like all their work is in Black and brown communities, but then all their leaders are white. And I'd be like, y'all been going for 40 years. Where are the leaders from your community? Right.
Yeah.
And I think, the challenge for a lot of nonprofits, and maybe uniquely so, is you're waiting to find almost like a fully formed leader rather than creating pathways for leadership. Right. And so right away, as soon as we did the first class, right, we then paid the people that we had the license from to come back and train more leaders from the community, even graduates of the program, right? And we started doing that twice a year until finally that group was like, you guys can certify your own leaders, right? Like, you guys know how to do it. But that started to develop a pool where all of our sites were led by graduates. And then that started identifying, hey, who are the people who are really leaning in, to this work and making it their own mission, and that started like the hiring, and the bringing people on board. And I would say, the beauty of that is you're bringing on true believers. Some of the challenges of that are you might be hiring somebody for passion, but you need to do skill set building on the other side of that. Right.
Yep.
And when given a choice, I will hire for passion over someone who's got the quote unquote right resume, like 9 times out of 10. Right. But it's really hard. Right. Like, I don't want to gloss over the challenges of that.
Well, and I think that's you're making a commitment to it, right? In other words, you're either, to me, well, I think you're making a commitment to it. You are deciding that you're going to accept the fact that you need a player that plays here, but you're going to start with one that plays here, and you're going to upscale them.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and then there's other parts where
the model of the business, right? That's what you're doing. You're upscaling people.
Yep, totally. Yep. And then over time, I would say that, you don't know what you don't know in any starting journey. And you go, hey, I think we need this kind of role. And then 6 months in, you go, that's not the role. We
Yeah.
actually need you to do these 4 other things.
Yeah.
Can you do those 4 other things? Yes or no? If no, no harm. Good luck in life, but we need to figure out these 4 things, you know? So there's a lot of like growth through exploration, but I'd also say I'm a big believer in have a clear North Star. And so, really quickly after those first kind of 2 cohorts, I started looking at all the data and realizing like, oh, wait a minute. Like the average solopreneur brings in around $26,000 of additional income. That's not my number. Like that's the Small Business Administration, right? And most poverty alleviation programs move the needle by a couple dollars an hour. You know what I mean? And I would argue well-intentioned, some really good moves to kind of get to stability, if you will, if you're coming from crisis to stability, but it's not thriving, right? And I want to see people go from crisis to stability to thriving. And so like an influx of 26K could mean an apartment in a different neighborhood with a different school district, right? It could mean a down payment on a first home. It could mean even things like a college savings fund, right? Like real long-term kind of stuff. And so I started crunching the numbers and I was like, wait a minute, we could have $10 million of economic impact if we, built it like this, and this. And at that point, we had an amazing volunteer who'd been supporting us a ton, who was a graduate of the program. And I invited her out to lunch. Her name is Shayna. And I was like, hey, would you consider running the academy? That's what we call the business training program. And I'm usually, Mark, you know me, I don't know how to not bleed passion, right? And she should have never said yes to that lunch. But she said, let me pray about it when I offered her the job, right? Which in the South, that's like a polite way of saying no. That's what that is.
Yeah, that's
right?
Exactly right.
Well, fast forward, she actually did pray about it. And she had her own internal dissonance moment where she couldn't ignore this. And she called me and she said, hey, I could take the job, but the money you're offering is too small. I need you to increase it by another 10,000. Right. And I think she kind of thought like, I'm calling your bluff. You know what I mean?
And you were like, let me hold on.
Exactly. And I called my buddy, Paul, St. Paul. And I was like, dude, I think I got this person. She's super dynamic. I think she can help us grow this. And he goes, cool, I'm in. I called her back in 9 minutes, and Shayna, I'm a big believer in tell people what you want to have accomplished. Don't tell them how to do it. Right. Like if you hire smart people, right, that's going to get you far. And so I said, hey, the mission is have $10 million of economic impact within 3 years. And she did it in 18 months, Yeah.
Well, and I want to stop you here because this is a really important thing. And you talked before about ego and some of what this is it's not ego, but there is a requirement to do what you do, what I do, what people I bring into this conversation do, that requires ego, right?
Yeah, and you have to believe you have something to bring to the table.
Well, right, and also great founders, right, are juvenile delinquents by their nature. It's like, oh yeah, watch me, right? And we also have a reality distortion field. The problem with that is it works on us. So there's that whole dynamic. So when I think about this idea that you came to the realization, and for me, it was like when I finally figured out I needed to shut the fuck up and pardon my French, and bring people in who knew more about what they were great at than I did. That's when things started to really happen, because at that point I realized this is my role. This is what I'm really good at. This is what I'm great at. I'll claim that. And what I'm not great at, I'm going to go find somebody else who is, and then I'm going to get the heck out of their way.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. What's interesting though is like that is a real dynamic, kind of beautiful thing of the ego to believe you have something to bring to the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the humility to know you don't have everything to bring to the table.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that really started accelerating things. And pretty quickly
So
into
that
that
was
journey.
so that year. So basically, I'm just making sure I'm tracking. You do
Yeah.
2 cohorts. So that's now we're in 2017. So she enters the picture in 18, 19.
So she graduated, I want to say she graduated fall of 2017.
Okay, so she's out the door and then came back in 18 to take the job.
Volunteering throughout 18.
Okay.
Takes the job starting beginning of 19.
And then
I think.
beats
Yep.
your mandate by what margin?
I mean, she did it in half the time. Yeah. And like, 9 months, 10 months into that, I was like, oh, because I was also always keeping my eye out for someone who would take my job as executive director. And so, in that 9 months in, I was like, hey, would you be up for doing like a leadership transition process? And this is, I do some coaching. I bring some other coaches to the table, and she said yes. We started that process, and then she took over as ED at the tail end of 2021.
So, and how did you guys? Just because this was one of the great leveling moments, and I think changed a little bit of the trajectory for everybody on many levels. How did you guys work through COVID?
Yeah. So I mean,
coming in right through that whole period, right?
Yeah. So she had led throughout 2019, right? Yep. So she had thank God she had a year of solid, like kind of knowing where everything was, you know what I mean? And then so first we had the tornado, right?
Yeah.
And
right.
The tornado took out one of our sites for class, like leveled the building. And we were officed out of the Magruder Family Resource Center in North Nashville at that point.
Yep.
And myself and Alicia Haddock over there, who was the director at the time, and then some amazing community partners. Like in the first 24 hours after the tornado had wiped out huge chunks of North Nashville, we made the Magruder Family Resource Center one of like the 2 or 3 main resource hubs. I mean, dude, there are several groups that were major parts of that. It was I loved being a part of that. Thousands of volunteers. So like, it was crazy. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, and hey, guess what? It's not just a tornado. It's also COVID. And, then it was like, hey, Shayna, you got to figure out how to get all of our sites switched to digital, train our people on how to be good, Zoom leaders. And we have to do a graduation digitally. Right. And my story, but and very open about it, because it's kind of the main theme of the book, No Elevator to Everest. But our son and his disabilities, moderate to severe autism, right? Global cognitive disability. In the last few years, been diagnosed with a rare neuromuscular genetic disease. There's only 50 known cases in the world, right? So hyper need. And so like the world was shutting down, and my son's intensity and his needs were just like astronomical.
Yep.
And so all that to say, if it weren't for Shayna, like we probably would have been dead in the water at that point. Because I had to tell our team and our board, like, hey guys, until this is over, I'm at like 40% capacity. Because like we are struggling profoundly as a family through this. Yeah. But Shayna did it, and found great ways to make graduation feel fun and joyful. And Yeah, like that was such an amazing year of growth for her.
So you get through that. You've made this transition, right? And I want to kind of move us into this period of you have this period of change and growth. Um, your role has changed at that point. So you're now you're a little bit out of the ops chair again. Yay, you. And you've come through COVID and you're still, you have all these things going on. So this last kind of chunk of the adventure so far is you've moved into this new kind of place. You have this new book, which you're doing kind of seemingly more than it seems humanly possible with everything you've described. And then we hit this new brick wall of the new environment. So let's kind of unpack this last little leg and sort of land the plane today. And then I want to rewind us all the way back, and I've got kind of a way to wrap us up. So give us kind of this last leg, and let's talk about that, and then see where we are.
Yeah. So, on the org side, things are like up and to the right. For a number of years.
You've got a partnership with Notre Dame. You've got you've started the idea that back here people were like, what you're doing? What? Is now turned into, holy crap, I want to get involved. I remember when I brought David Rowland to you and we left that meeting and we're walking out and he goes, that guy is not feeding fish, he's teaching to fish. Like that's the underlying problem. And I went, yep, that's right. So now it's not this crazy guy is like, who the hell is this guy? It's now everybody's like, oh my God, we have to help. So talk about that transition. And
there's real momentum. I mean, there was a moment like when we started graduating, when we had crossed like the 500, 600, 700 graduates mark, people were kind of like, what? And that
economic dollar, the economic impact dollars.
Yep, we're getting crazy. Yep. And what came with that was like Notre Dame, for instance, they have the leading research institute in the nation, the Lab for Economic Opportunity, right? That's doing like randomized control trials to really know what works and then help kind of scatter it around the nation, right? And so, okay, awesome. Now we're partnered with Notre Dame. Oh my gosh, now we're partnered with Goldman Sachs, like all this great stuff. And there were, post-COVID, there were also a lot of kind of like federal dollars that were getting released through states and various channels to increase business creation on kind of all levels, right? And so we were riding that wave. And then, I would say then we had the moment where affirmative action was dismantled, right? And in the aftermath of that, some of those groups that were, doing those lawsuits started going after funds, for example, venture capital funds that supported like Black female founders and said, hey, you can't, that's racism, etc., right? By their definition. And in that moment, we started to see corporate partners, not all of them, but some of them kind of, pull away. And the thing that's so fascinating about this to me is that you don't have to define it as DEI. You don't have to define it as woke. But if you are going to look at the real statistics, right, of where the concentrated pockets of poverty are in cities in the Southeast, right? You're going to be talking about meeting Black and brown families where they are, right? And I'm not saying poverty is exclusively that, not at all, right? We have hurting rural communities all over, right?
Yep.
So I'm not saying it's just one thing. Do you know what I mean? But it was interesting to see, like, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so you sort of skidded the card at a day. I want to back up a little bit before we go
Yeah.
into this. I think this is important because it has implications for all nonprofits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before, let's just back up to a little happier time, right? Before the shit hit the fan. As you were moving into this new kind of role, so you've now got a strong leader who you've trained up, who you've brought to a place where you could go do the next piece of work. That's when Notre Dame happened. That's when. So talk a little bit more about that kind of fertile ground before we get to maybe the ground getting less fertile.
Yeah, I think that was shifting, like, my role as a co-founder to be primarily focused on development, right? Like, who are going to be your financial supporters, and then kind of intellectual partnership, right? I have run my own side hustles forever, right? So, like, I've done consulting work for some doctors, some researchers at Vanderbilt. And so, like, early on, we had brought Vanderbilt to the table through my connections to do custom pre and post, statistically significant surveys on our alumni. But, like, the Notre Dame thing was like a couple levels up, because, like, they were the poverty alleviation experts, right? And so my role started moving into a lot more travel, right? A lot more, like, speaking gigs, things like that, and really talking about ownership ends poverty, right? Like, at the end of the day, when you look at a city like Nashville, we're in the bottom 5% for economic mobility in the nation. We have a booming economy on the one hand, and this is still true, right?
Yeah.
And so when you ask, like, well, how would we change that? Most experts agree, well, small business creation is a key way to change the futures for these families or these neighborhoods. But then, so you go, okay, cool, let's do more small businesses. But then you look at the landscape of training, right? And so much of that meets you at rung, like, if you're thinking of a ladder, at rung 5 and above, right?
Yeah.
So it's, like the Entrepreneurs Organization, I love them. I think their work is fantastic. People I've talked to who've done forums, like, swear by it, right? Amazing group. And you have to have $250,000 to qualify for their entry-level program, right? And so for these smaller businesses, it means, like, the first rung is too high. And so like, what I was doing in those next years was, like, learning how to tell that story in a more effective way to invite partners and support, right? And I mean, you and I, like, when we met, one of the first things we started chewing on was, okay, how do we tell this story well, And
when I think about that, those early conversations, and then fast forward to watching you make those presentations in rooms with Bobby Frist, and you going to Praxis and doing that, and doing it on the big stage, and having so that genesis is to your point. You start back here when no one believes you, and you get to here and you begin to refine. You've got evidence. You can say, look, here, I'm not asking you to believe in something that doesn't exist. It exists. Now I want you to believe. We're talking about believing at a different level.
Totally. And it's, it's that thing, like, you go from early adopters to crossing the chasm to hitting the tipping point, right?
Yeah, that's right. And you've kind of hit that tipping point.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
In that you're kind of, in a way, you're that's happening. So talk a little bit about kind of that right now, and then we're gonna talk about how these potential headwinds may affect that. Right. So in the strategy of getting this to people who can go, yes, we can support this, and we can move this from the movement that you've created in Nashville to something bigger.
Yeah. So I think the real kind of unlock for us is when we are able to tell an economic empowerment story, right? That is grounded in good data, and we can show that this is what poverty alleviation looks like at scale, right? It ends up being, one, a true story, and two, a powerful story that invites partners from both sides of the aisle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where, my Republican friends love that we're doing business creation, right?
Yep.
My Democrat friends love that we're doing it in underinvested communities, right? And there's a really beautiful synergy. And then kind of the more reps I got, often with, Mark and I would go back and forth for anybody watching this, like, hey, use this story, use this phrase. Like, we did the real kind of wordsmithing work. And then that led to, we got into Praxis, which is an amazing national fellowship with some of the biggest foundations as partners in the nation. And that's like, oh, now you're in New York, and now you're in San Francisco, and now you're pitching in Napa Valley, and that stuff started happening.
It's a long damn way from the neighborhood, my friend. Right?
Oh, dude.
And in a way, but all roads lead back to that neighborhood that you still live in.
Still living. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as that was happening nationally, we were still like a best kept secret here in town, in the wider business community, and then you and a couple others were like, no, we like, this is too good. We've got to, break this into some different rooms. And a couple people, especially in kind of the venture capital private equity space, were like, man, we know what the power of business creation is. We want to make that power available to more neighbors, right? And that was kind of the sentiment. And so I would say this year especially, we have had a groundswell of a tipping point in that world where they're going, you've graduated 1,600 people? How did I not know you? Like, let's go, and there's a really fun moment right now where it's like, the overnight success that was 13 years in the making.
Always is, baby. Always is.
Yeah. And like, I would tell anybody who is starting something, right, or has a dream to start something, like, it will be far harder than you ever could imagine, and it will be far more fun than you could have ever dreamed, right? It is both of those things. And that has been our story.
Well, okay, so we've got a couple minutes left, and I want to kind of, I don't want to actually, I want to land the plane here. I don't want to go into where we might be headed. And I want to sort of, I put this question to everybody, right?
Yeah.
When the impetus for this whole thing was around, for me, education. That you and I are practicing the same arts, right? And I do it with founders for a nonprofit, but I also have been teaching for a long time. And so what created the impetus for this whole thing was working with kids. For me, it was blue collar kids and first gen and lower middle class kids who were never going to have the opportunity to have exposure to people, frankly, like you and like other for-profit business leaders. The interesting ties between what you do and what for-profit folks do are to me, they're a lot the same. The difference for you is you do it at your own detriment, right? You do it for the larger good. You're a zealot. You're not a founder. You're slightly higher plane because it's for impact, not for money.
Yeah. And there's no exit for this.
No exit from this. God help you. So the kind of the last question that I try to put to people is, if you could advise your younger self, if you think about going back to that moment where you're like what the hell is going on in the world? What would you advise your younger self today about all of this long road that you've run so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would try to encourage myself that there's no way to learn what you need to learn except by doing it. So go ahead and start, right? Like the kind of lessons you have to learn to grow something, like there's no theory. There's only practice, you know? And
Yeah.
if you stay in a learning posture, right? Like, man, you'll get there. I'd also tell my early self, like, to adopt the philosophy of who, not how, faster.
Mhm.
Um, like, man.
Unpack that a little for me.
Yeah, so this great concept, a good book by Dan Hardy on the subject, but like, I a lot of founders are like hyper performers who just say yes and take on more and more, right? Kind of have that spirit.
Yep.
Um, and so their first question is, how will I do this? Right?
Mhm.
And I would switch that to say, who will do this with me,
Oh
or
my.
who will do this for me? Right?
Mhm.
Um, and the quicker you can get to that, the better off you'll be.
Oh man, you landed the plane right square in the middle of the aircraft carrier, my brother. Um, thank you so much, Zach. We're gonna pull us out here in a minute. Will, thank you so much
No,
for
thank you,
being here.
Mark.
I just you're one of my favorite human beings, and I really appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, right back at you, man. I
I'll put
greatly
you on the
appreciate
flip
it.
side, my friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Peace. Zach, take us home, baby.